Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. And today I would like to talk about the nature of ego. I think now we've come on the channel to a point where you might feel that topics might be repeated, but I think we are going in greater depths into them. We have put a basic foundation of most of our definitions about ego, attachment, fear, desire, and all the other things, thought. And if you followed the channel, then you are well capable of knowing this, that how we are using specific words, what are the definitions that we imply for specific word, and we keep repeating them because it's very easy to confuse them. It's very easy to fall back in our classical way of feeling about what is ego or what is fear, what is attachment. Last week we covered attachment and we connected it with inattention. These are actually indications towards what attention is. If you are listening carefully, then I'm sharing with you all the places and the traps where you might get caught, where you might step into a hole. Okay? And because the mind is tremendously used to that, the mind is tremendously used to falling in a hole, we have to keep clearing those things. Because sometimes you think you are preventing something, but it is not the case. You are committing it, you are committing to it in some other way, which you are not aware of. So, today we would try to expose the ego a little bit more. The reason is because every aspect of the mind is related to the ego. Now, in a sense, the mind and the ego are together. They are one. But we do use two words for them because in our daily life, there is a feeling that the mind is the playground in which ego performs its actions. A common person would always distinguish mind and ego. Okay? And we are not insulting anyone by saying someone is common or someone is used to a certain pattern. That's all we are implying, that in your everyday life, that's how you would answer. So, can we really see that ego feels like it is performing inside the field of the mind? The mind feels like a house, a playground, and in that, ego exists and does its job. That's the common person's perspective. And I will keep that perspective right now for this video. We are not going to overcomplicate stuff here. So that is the first thing you see about the ego, that the ego exists inside the mind as a player, as an actor. Okay? Now, the ego wants to help to make the life better. The ego's central claim is that the reason I'm acting is because I want to fix the problems, I want to make life free of problems. That's the central claim of the ego. And in some scenarios, it also achieves to do it. Now, what it doesn't observe is that those scenarios are highly limited. When we use the word limited, we simply mean that those scenarios are inside a limit, inside a boundary, if you would like to use that term. So, if you would ask the ego what is 5 plus 5, or if you would ask the ego what is the solution for a complex equation, it would answer it. And it would appear that the ego has made your life better by solving that specific problem. But that very specific problem is inside a limited framework. There is nothing like numbers by themselves. In the universe, numbers don't exist. Numbers is a concept developed by humans to make sense of the universe, to perform actions and to classify things, to make life easier, to have a system. So, if the mind is able to help you execute that system better, then in a way, not the mind. So, if the ego is able to execute the things, the tasks of that system that man has created, then in a way it is making life easier. But it's a very, very limited affair in the sense all that is inside the sphere of a system. That system can be anything, whether it's language or. So, because of that pattern, the ego starts to feel that if it can solve certain problems, then why not try to solve all the problems of life? And this is where it falls off. It starts with a good intention. It's a good intention to solve all the problems of life. That's good. But in order to do that, in order to make an attempt to solve all problems of life, it ends up creating some problems as well. And when it does that, when it creates its own problems, it does not observe that it is creating those problems. So there are some problems which are genuinely existing in life. You are hungry, you don't have food. That's a genuine problem. You have to solve it. You have to either hunt, you have to find some shopping center, some restaurant, wherever you can find food. And the ego can help you do that. But when the ego claims to be the ultimate fix for every problem, it ends up creating problems, specifically psychological problems, which then, what is the word? Which then sprout or germinate in the real world as well, in the form of economic problems, environmental problems. Those are first psychological problems which then are visible in the real world as well, or the outer world as well. So the ego totally fails to observe that as it is trying to solve problems, it is creating its own problems. And that is itself a huge problem, right? We don't need a solution which creates its own problems, because that is just avoiding the problem in a way. It's like you're delaying when the effect of the problem will hit you. You say, I can delay it for 10 days by doing this. So you haven't really solved it. You've just delayed it. And that's what the ego is very good at, actually. It's a good point that the ego delays the problem and it thinks it has solved it. Yes, that's good, actually. So that delay then ends up making further more problems. So psychologically, all the major problems that we face in terms of anxiety, fear, depression, or whatever are centrally and essentially because of the ego. But the ego never ever sees itself or catches itself creating those problems. The ego is always claiming, look, I'm just here to help you. But the cost of that help is a new set of problems. And then those new set of problems will have another new set of problems, and you end up in a chain of problems. So that's one part of the nature of the ego. It is blind towards itself. Let's put it like this. Which is like, how do I say? It's the core of the ego's problem. That the ego does a lot of stupid things. But if you would ask, what's the central stupid thing, what's the central bad thing that ego does, then that would be this, that it is blind towards itself. So, if the ego is blind towards itself, then it can only know the consequence or how it has done something when the result of the action comes out. And then because it has to face the result. So, blindness towards itself is one aspect of the ego. Second, the ego is always accumulative. The ego always accumulates. It just wants to accumulate more and more and more and more. Because in accumulation, it feels like it is more safe. It feels like just because it knows more, it is safer. Which is again, to some extent, is fine. But if it becomes a psychological problem for you, then it's not fine. If you say, I must know, because if I don't know, I will feel unstable in the sense of I will feel like I'm not safe. Then that is not science. That's not sensible. So the reason it wants to know is because it wants to feel safe. Another reason why it wants to know that is that it feels safe because of a certain action. It gathers knowledge, it gathers information, and I said the statement to feel safe. But how does it feel safe? It constantly reacts to whatever comes to the senses. And you can easily see it, how your ego constantly reacts to whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you smell, whatever you taste. There's a constant reaction to it. So, whatever information it is gathering, it is using that information to classify everything it sees. It doesn't want to see anything, it doesn't want to face anything which it does not know. So, everything that comes in front of it, it uses the past information, the past, and then it labels the new whatever it is observing using the past. And because it labels the whatever the new or the fresh observation, it feels like it already knows the fresh observation, whatever it's seeing. And when it feels like that, then there's a sense of security. There's a sense of security that yes, I know this, whatever it is in front of me. So the ego is blind towards itself. It is crazy about gathering information, and the reason it gathers information is because it wants to feel safe by constantly reacting, by constantly classifying things into what is this, what is that, what is this, what is that. And when it does that, it thinks, yes, I know everything. It means everything is fine and safe. I can feel safe. Okay? So, those are the three central aspects of ego. That yes, I really want to be blind towards myself. What more? What more? The ego also creates a false and distorted picture of what is right. For example, the ego has created a false picture, a false idea that silence is something scary. I've met so many people who, whenever they start meditation and they start to calm down a little bit, that's the first thing they complain about, that it's too scary because it's very silent inside. So when I ask them that, but what's the problem with the silence if it's silent inside? They say, no, but silence is very scary. This is something I see that as a false image created by the ego. Because the ego is always chattering, cha 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 cha. Because it's always reacting to things. To be silent is like a death to the ego. Because in silence, the ego cannot exist. Only silence can exist. Because only forms and things can act or react. Silence has its own kind of action, which is totally different, which the ego cannot detect. The ego is incapable of detecting that action. So, the ego is always and always trying to be chatty, trying to be in movement. Okay? It's always trying to be in a state of a flux, never be static, never rest. That's why you would see, you would whole day keep thinking, and in the nights, again, that thinking continues in forms of different kinds of dreams. So the brain hardly gets a rest, which is what deep sleep is like, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, every person gets a night. And that's truly the amount of rest the brain gets. Otherwise, the brain is always doing something. So, the because the ego cannot exist in silence, it has created a wrong image about silence, that silence is something wrong, that silence is something scary. Okay? If you would get the courage and try and sit in silence for some time, then you would see silence is not so scary, or not scary at all, actually. Silence is very comforting, it's very relaxing, it refreshes the brain. If you are really silent for 10-15 minutes, right, then the feeling is kind of similar to how you feel when you wake up in the morning. Okay? So, for own personal profit, for own personal benefit, ego creates these false images. And there would be many of those. There would be many of those in terms of distortion of meanings of words, like words like love, care, words like passion, words like so many words which are totally distorted by the ego. The original meanings have been totally lost. So the ego is desperately trying to do that. It is creating a scenario, an environment in the mind which supports its existence, which supports that it keeps on existing. Now, the problem with that is it's a highly energy consuming process, the ego. The mind consumes a humongous amount of energy to keep chattering. Chak, 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 chak. It's very, very tiring. So, fear is created towards silence by the ego. The ego says, no, silence is something you should be afraid of. Don't go towards silence, because in silence it sees its death. It sees it would have to stop. Okay? So these would be 4 basic things that maybe I would open today, that the ego is constantly gathering stuff, it's reacting on stuff, and it is giving wrong meanings to things. All of that is part of one cycle that the ego always keeps on playing. It always and always forgets to observe itself. So, I think not observing itself helps it to commit the other crimes. So the first requirement is don't observe yourself. Only observe the world, and then because of that, you wouldn't see what kind of other mistakes you make in the world. Only the world is to blame, someone else is to blame. You yourself is never to be blamed. So I hope if you're trying it with me, then give it a week for every video and try to look at it in your life, how you commit this loop, these scenarios. Same was with attachment last week, and the same is now. See the ego, catch the ego. And now I have told you the signs of the ego, so you wouldn't be confused when you commit those things. Then you can catch yourself doing those things, right? So let's keep catching ourselves, because that's the only way we can improve ourselves. We are very smart at hiding things. Okay? Let's meet next week.